I moved to Briarwood, Idaho, on a cold November evening. The town was barely a speck on the map, isolated, quiet, and surrounded by thick pine forests that swallowed the horizon. It was the kind of place where the air smelled of damp earth, where the sky stretched wide and empty, and where the silence settled deep in your bones. It was exactly what I needed. I was running from my past, a divorce, a job that had drained me to nothing, and a life that had become unbearably small. I found Briarwood by accident, a rental listing online for a modest one-story house at the edge of town, cheap enough that it felt like a miracle. No neighbors on either side, just me and the whispering pines beyond the backyard fence. Perfect. The landlord, Mr. Holloway, was an older man, thin as a rail, with a handshake like brittle twigs. He showed me the house, said very little, but before I signed the lease, he handed me a piece of paper. It had rules on it. Briarwood Community. Nighttime rules, strictly enforced. Rule 1. Keep all doors and windows locked from 2 a.m. to sunrise. No exceptions. Rule 2. Do not answer the door if you hear knocking between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. There will be knocking. Ignore it. Rule 3. If you hear whistling outside after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. Close your eyes. Cover your ears. Do not react. Rule 4. Under no circumstances should you go outside after 2 a.m., no matter what you hear. Rule 5. Do not speak about these rules to anyone who does not already know them. I had laughed. This some small-town joke? Holloway's expression never changed. He just pushed the paper toward me. Read them? Follow them. His voice was quiet, but firm. Or leave now. Something about the way he said it, the stillness in his pale eyes, unnerved me. I took the paper. I moved in. I locked my doors. For the first few nights, nothing happened. Briarwood was just another sleepy town, where the roads felt empty, even during the day, where the people I met at the single gas station spoke in murmurs and didn't meet my eyes. I convinced myself that the rules were just old folklore, small-town superstition, passed down through generations, a way to keep kids from sneaking out at night. Until the 5th night. I woke at 2:13 a.m. to the sound of knocking, not polite knocking. Slow, deliberate, heavy knocks, one every 3 seconds. I sat up in bed, my heartbeat hammering. 3 more knocks. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, no reason anyone should be at my door at this hour. Then, just as my breath caught in my throat, the knocking stopped. For 10 seconds, there was only silence. Then I heard it. A whistle, low, drifting through the trees, almost melodic but wrong. It was moving. It passed in front of my house, growing louder for a moment, then fading into the woods. I lay frozen in bed until the sun came up. That morning, when I stepped outside, I found footprints in the frost. Bare, human footprints. They led from my front door, all the way to the tree line. I wasn't alone last night, and whatever it was, it knew I was here. I barely slept after that night. The knocking, the whistle, the footprints. It wasn't just paranoia. I knew what I heard. I saw those footprints in the morning frost, and yet, when I stepped out to inspect them, they ended abruptly at the tree line, as if whoever or whatever made them had simply vanished into the woods. I spent most of that day on edge, jumping at every small sound. By noon, I couldn't stand being alone in the house anymore, so I drove into town. Briarwood wasn't big. It had a single diner, a gas station, a post office, and a general store that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. The few people I passed looked at me, but didn't hold their gaze, like I was something they'd rather ignore. Inside the diner, the scent of coffee and bacon should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Everything felt muted, like the whole place was wrapped in an invisible tension. I took a seat at the counter. A woman behind it, mid-40s, graying hair, a name tag that read Maggie, poured me coffee without asking. I hesitated before speaking. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She didn't look up. "Depends on what it is." I took out the piece of paper Mr. Holloway had given me and slid it across the counter. "These rules. Are they serious?" Maggie stopped mid-pour. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she looked up at me. "You followed them last night?" I swallowed. "Yeah." She nodded. "Good." I waited for her to say more, but she didn't. Instead, she picked up the coffee pot and moved further down the counter, as if the conversation was over. I tried again. "Look, something was outside my house. It knocked, and the whistling." Maggie's grip tightened on the coffee pot. "Don't talk about it." Her voice was low, urgent. I leaned in. "But what the hell is it?" For a second, I thought she might actually answer. But then she glanced over my shoulder, and her expression changed. Fear. I turned. An old man had entered the diner. He was wiry, sun-leathered, dressed in a flannel jacket, but it wasn't his appearance that sent a chill through me. It was his eyes. Cold, gray, watching me with quiet intensity. Maggie turned away, busying herself with plates that didn't need cleaning. The other customers hunched lower over their meals. The tension in the room was suffocating. The old man walked straight to me and stopped a foot away. "You're new," he said, his voice as rough as gravel. I nodded. "Yeah." "You heard it, didn't you?" I exhaled slowly. "The whistling?" The man's jaw tensed. He sat down beside me. "Listen carefully, boy. You follow the rules. You don't talk about it. And you sure as hell don't go looking for answers." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Why not?" The man studied me for a long moment. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Because if it knows you're listening, it listens back." The diner door swung open. For a split second, I swore I heard something outside. A soft, distant whistle carried by the wind. The old man stiffened. He stood abruptly and strode out of the diner without another word. I sat there, my coffee untouched, heart pounding. I wasn't crazy. The town knew. And whatever was out there, it knew me now too. I drove home from the diner with my mind tangled in knots. Maggie's reaction, the way the old man had looked at me, that last thing he said, "If it knows you're listening, it listens back." I locked my doors the moment I stepped inside. The house felt smaller, darker, as if the very walls had absorbed my unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake moving here. Still, part of me wanted to believe it was just a local legend, a weird bit of town folklore meant to keep people from wandering the woods at night. Maybe the knocking had been some drunk messing around. Maybe the footprints were my imagination, distorted by morning frost. But the whistle. I had never heard anything like that before. That night, I sat in my living room, with every light on, waiting, listening. I kept the paper with the rules beside me on the table, reading them over and over. My fingers traced over each line, stopping at Rule 3. If you hear whistling outside after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. Close your eyes. Cover your ears. Do not react. What would happen if I did react? I glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. 13 minutes. My breath quickened. My palms were damp. But I wasn't a superstitious person. If I was going to live here, I needed to prove to myself that this was nothing. So, I made a decision. At 1:59 a.m., I turned off every light. I sat in the darkness, heart hammering, staring out the window at the moonlit trees, and I waited. The silence felt heavy, pressing against my skull. Every little sound, the house settling, the wind against the glass, made my skin crawl. Then, at exactly 2:07 a.m., it started. The knocking. My breath hitched. It was exactly like before, slow, deliberate, impossibly heavy. I gripped the armrests of my chair, willing myself to stay put. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. My hands ached from gripping the chair. Don't answer it. Don't move. Then the knocking stopped. A thick silence settled over the house, and then the whistle. Soft at first. A distant, drifting melody that seemed to curl through the trees. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound natural. It was closer now. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart thudding. The sound grew louder. Too loud. As if whatever was making it was standing right outside my window. My breathing turned shallow. Then, against every ounce of common sense, I opened my eyes. A shadow passed by my window. Tall, thin, wrong, not walking, gliding. It stopped, and then, in a slow, deliberate movement, it turned its head toward me. The whistling stopped. My blood ran cold. It knew I had looked. I lunged off the chair and dove onto the floor, pressing myself against the carpet, hands clamped over my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that whatever was outside would just go away. The silence stretched. Seconds felt like hours. Then, so softly it could have been imagined, a whisper came through the glass. I see you. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't stop shaking until the sun finally rose. I didn't leave my house the next morning. I sat on the couch, hands still trembling, my mind replaying that moment over and over. The shadow gliding past my window, the way it had turned toward me, and that whisper, I see you. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. But I had felt it. The air in the room had changed in that moment, like something ancient and hungry had pressed itself against the glass, sensing me, marking me. I tried to convince myself it was just my sleep-deprived brain playing tricks on me. But then, I saw the footprints. They were back. The frost on my porch had melted, but the footprints remained, bare, human-shaped, too long, leading directly up to my window. But the worst part? They didn't leave. The prints ended, right at the glass, as if whoever, or whatever, had just stood there, watching me. I slammed the curtains shut. I needed answers. By noon, I forced myself to leave the house. The paranoia followed me, sinking its claws deep into my mind. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see a tall, thin shape standing at the edge of the road. I didn't, but I felt it. When I reached town, I went straight to the diner. Maggie was there, wiping down the counter. But the moment she saw me, her face darkened. "You looked, didn't you?" she muttered. My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" She sighed and put the rag down. "People like you always think it's just a story," she said, shaking her head. "You think we're just some backwoods town full of superstitious idiots. But you don't get it. The rules aren't there to scare you. They're there to keep it from noticing you." I leaned in. "What happens now?" Maggie's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're marked," she said finally. "It knows you. It'll keep watching now, testing you." My mouth felt dry. "How do I stop it?" Maggie hesitated. Then she slid something across the counter, a small jar of black salt. "You pour this in a circle around your house, every night," she said. "It won't stop it, but it might keep it out." My fingers tightened around the jar. "Might?" Maggie exhaled sharply, leaning in close. "It doesn't always follow the rules." A chair scraped loudly behind me. I turned. The old man from yesterday was sitting in the corner, watching me. He didn't say a word. He just tapped his fingers against the table in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Just like the knocking. I stared at him, his lips curled into the faintest smirk. I left the diner without finishing my coffee. That night, I did exactly as Maggie told me. I poured the salt. I locked every door and window. And when the knocking started at 2:04 a.m., I didn't move. But this time, the knocking didn't stop. It just kept going. And behind it, beneath the noise, I heard something else. Fingernails dragging against the glass. The knocking didn't stop. Slow, steady, relentless. It wasn't just at the door this time. It was moving, knocking on the walls, the windows, the back door, a slow circle around my house. I sat curled on the couch, gripping my knees, heart hammering. The salt was supposed to work. Maggie said it would work. But the knocking continued. Then, at 2:37 a.m., it changed. The knocks turned lighter, softer, like fingertips tapping against the glass. Then, a voice, not whispering, not distant. This time it was clear, right outside my window. "Let me in." I stopped breathing. The voice was wrong. It sounded human, but there was something off about it. Too calm, too smooth, like someone imitating speech but not quite understanding it. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't react. Don't acknowledge it. The voice came again, softer now. "You're scared. I can hear you breathing." I covered my mouth with both hands. Then came the whistle. Right outside the window. It was waiting for me to look. I almost did. I don't know what stopped me. Pure fear, maybe. But I kept my eyes shut. I pressed my forehead to my knees and willed myself not to move. Then the voice shifted. It changed. I froze. It was my voice now. "Come outside. Just for a second." My blood turned to ice. The knocking returned, harder this time, shaking the walls. My entire body screamed at me to move, to run. But I had nowhere to go. Then, sudden silence. I didn't move. A minute passed, then 2. The room felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened. Then, from outside, footsteps, software barefoot, walking away. I didn't relax. Not yet. Then, one last whisper. "See you tomorrow." I stayed curled in that position until sunrise. When morning came, I checked the house. The salt line around my home was untouched. Not a single grain disturbed. But something else was. My front door was unlocked. I knew for a fact that I had locked it. Something had been inside last night. Something had been in my house. And I had never heard it come in. I didn't leave the house that morning. I just sat on the floor, staring at my unlocked front door, gripping a kitchen knife in my shaking hands. The salt line had been untouched. That should have meant it never got in. But the door, it was open, which meant one of two things. Either I forgot to lock it, or worse, it was never locked to begin with. I replayed last night in my head, over and over. The knocking, the whispers, the thing outside imitating my voice, and that last part. "See you tomorrow." I had followed the rules. I hadn't looked. I hadn't reacted. But that didn't seem to matter anymore. This thing wasn't just testing me. It was playing with me. And I had the horrible, gut-wrenching feeling that it was only getting started. By noon, I forced myself to drive back into town. I needed answers. Maggie wasn't at the diner, so I went to the general store instead. A man in his 60s, grizzled, with deep lines in his face, stood behind the counter. He eyed me as soon as I walked in. "You're the new one." I hesitated. "Yeah." He wiped his hands on a rag. "You see it yet?" My throat felt dry. I heard it. His expression darkened. "That's bad enough." I swallowed. "What is it?" He shook his head. "No one knows. It's always been here. My granddad talked about it. Said the old ones, the ones who lived in these woods before us, they had their own name for it. They left. We stayed." I gripped the counter. "How do I stop it?" The man looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned in and said something that sent a deep, icy dread through my body. "You can't." I opened my mouth to argue, but then I noticed something. Behind him, on a bulletin board near the door, were missing persons flyers. At least a dozen of them. Most were old, some dating back to the 90s, but a few looked recent. The clerk followed my gaze. "Don't go outside," he said, voice grim. "Not even once. Some of them, they went outside." I stared at the photos. Some of them. What about the others? The question sat heavy in my throat. I didn't ask it, because I already knew the answer. They hadn't gone outside, but they were gone anyway. That night, I locked the doors. I poured a fresh line of salt. I sat in my living room with my knife in my lap and waited. At 2:11 a.m., the knocking started. At 2:19 a.m., the whistling followed. At 2:24 a.m., I heard my own voice outside again. "You're not safe in there." I closed my eyes, covered my ears, tried to block it out, and then, at 2:37 a.m., the closet door in my hallway creaked open from inside the house. I sat frozen on the couch, gripping my knife so tightly my knuckles turned white. The knocking had stopped. The whistling had faded. But now, something was inside the house. The closet door in the hallway had creaked open. Slowly, deliberately. My body screamed at me to run, to move, to do something. But I couldn't. I just sat there, eyes locked on the dark hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I heard it. A soft, dragging sound, like bare feet sliding against the hardwood floor, moving toward me. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. The rules were supposed to keep it outside. The dragging sound stopped just outside the living room. I forced myself to breathe as silently as possible, hands shaking around the knife. Then, in the quiet, a voice spoke. My voice. "I can see you." A rush of cold terror crawled up my spine. It was close, right in the doorway. I wanted to scream. I wanted to look. But I didn't. I squeezed my eyes shut, clamped my hands over my ears. Don't react. Don't acknowledge it. Then, the floor creaked, right in front of me. It was standing there. I could feel it. Too close. Then, warm breath against my ear. "Why won't you look at me?" Something cold and thin brushed against my arm. I jerked back instinctively. I couldn't help it. My eyes snapped open. Nothing was there. The room was empty. The hallway was empty. The closet door was still open, but whatever had come out of it was gone. But I wasn't relieved, because something felt different now. Like the air itself had changed. Like the house wasn't just mine anymore. And then I heard it. One last sound from the hallway. A whisper. Not my voice this time. Something else. Something that sounded like 100 voices overlapping at once. "Tomorrow you will open the door." The breath left my lungs. No, I wouldn't. But even as I thought it, I felt it. A deep, sick pulling sensation in my chest. Like the idea had already been placed there. Like a command buried deep inside my head. I sat awake until the sun rose shaking. Because for the first time since moving here, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to resist. I didn't sleep. Not that I could anymore. The moment the sun came up, I searched every inch of my house. The doors were still locked, the windows were still latched, the salt circle was untouched. And yet, something had been inside last night. I could still feel it. The air in the house was heavier. The corners of every room seemed darker, deeper. Shadows stretched just a little too far. The walls felt like they were breathing. And worst of all, I couldn't stop thinking about the door. The idea had buried itself inside me, wrapping around my mind like roots digging into soil. Tomorrow you will open the door. I didn't want to. But what if I already had? What if last night, in some dazed, half-conscious state, I had already let it in? The thought made my stomach turn. I needed to get out of here. I grabbed my keys, threw open the front door, and practically sprinted to my car. I didn't stop driving until I reached the gas station on the far side of town. Inside, an older man behind the counter looked up as I walked in. He took one glance at my face and sighed, like he had seen this before. "You looked, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He gestured for me to come closer, lowered his voice. "You need to leave." I swallowed. "Leave town." The man shook his head. "No, leave the house, tonight." "Why?" The man glanced at the windows, like he was making sure we weren't being listened to. "Because you can only fight it for so long." I gripped the counter. "What does that mean?" He exhaled slowly. "No one opens the door willingly, but eventually, everyone does." Something cold settled deep in my stomach. I backed away. I don't understand." The man's face darkened. "You will." That night, I tried everything. I barricaded the doors, pushed furniture against them, piled salt inside the house this time, covering the windowsills, the floor, the hallway, every possible entry point. None of it mattered. At 2:03 a.m., the knocking started. Harder this time, more urgent. I pressed myself against the farthest wall, hands clamped over my ears. Don't listen. Don't react. The knocks were shaking the walls now. Then, at 2:17 a.m., the whispers started. Not outside, inside, right behind me. "The door is already open." I gasped and turned, but I was alone. No, this wasn't real. This wasn't happening. I squeezed my eyes shut, focused on my breathing. But then I felt it. A hand. Cold, thin fingers wrapping around mine. My breath hitched. My hand was on the doorknob, twisting it. I yanked back, stumbling away, my heart hammering. I didn't move it. I swear to God I didn't. But the doorknob was still turning, slowly, silently. Then, click. The lock disengaged. The door began to swing open, and beyond it, darkness. Not the kind of darkness that comes with night. A void, an absence of everything, and inside it, a tall, thin silhouette gliding forward. My vision blurred. My body felt like it wasn't my own anymore. It whispered, inches from my face. "Time to go." And then, the lights flicked on. Sunlight. Morning. The door was shut. The salt was untouched. I was standing in the middle of my living room, my hand still hovering over the doorknob. I gasped for air, collapsing onto the floor. My body ached, like I had been standing in that position for hours. The whispers were gone. The knocking had stopped. But deep inside my chest, I felt something worse, something missing, like a piece of me had been left on the other side of that door, and I had no idea how much longer I could fight the urge to go get it. I packed my bags at sunrise. I didn't care about breaking the lease. I just needed to go. I threw everything I could into the trunk of my car, hands trembling, pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I just drove. I didn't stop until I was nearly 3 towns away, pulling into a cheap roadside motel, barely able to keep my hand steady enough to check in. That first night away from Briarwood, I slept with the lights on, clutching the motel key in my hand. No knocking, no whistling, no voices. It was over. At least that's what I told myself. Days passed, then weeks. I moved states, changed my number, told myself I had escaped. But I hadn't, because something was different now. At night, I still dreamed of the door, the one I almost opened. Some nights I saw the void waiting behind it. Some nights I saw the silhouette stepping forward. And some nights, I saw myself, standing in my living room, pulling the door open. And when I woke up, the door to my bedroom was always open. At first, I thought I was just forgetting to close it. Then, one night, I locked it, bolted it shut. But when I woke up, the lock was still engaged, the bolt was still in place, and the door was wide open. I started sleeping in chairs, away from doors. But it didn't matter, because last night, I heard it again. Not the knocking, not the whistling, the whisper. Software right beside me. Come outside. And for one horrible moment, my body almost obeyed. My muscles tensed, my legs shifted. I felt myself lean forward like something was pulling me toward the door. I fought it. I won. But next time, I don't know if I will. Because the truth is, you don't escape it. It doesn't stay in Briarwood. It doesn't wait at 2 a.m. Once it knows you, it never stops watching. And one day, sooner or later, I will open the door.